Welcome to the Ordinary Extraordinary Cemetery, where every death had a life and every life had a story. My name is Jenny Johnson.
Hello, and I'm Diane Hartshorn.
I want to start off first by apologizing to our listeners because we did not have an episode last week, which is not usual for us. And I didn't even announce it on social media last week. I had been traveling, I'd been home visiting Nebraska over the weekend, and I got busy and I just didn't have time to pull anything together. And then I decided, because I hadn't posted anything on our social media accounts earlier in the week, I was just going to take a break from the whole thing for a week. So
Good for you.
it was my little vacation hiatus for a week, but we're back. And this week we have a lovely brand new guest. He's never been on the show before. So we'll introduce him in just a moment. But a few other announcements. We have the Central City Cemetery Crawl this Saturday. I will be playing Mrs. Gundy. I'm a dairy farmer's wife this year, which I'm kind of excited about. I didn't, for all the studying of stuff I've done in that part of Colorado, I didn't realize there was this particular dairy farm there, but it was a very
Oh, very
important part
cool.
of the community. So I'm excited to be portraying part of that family this year. I think there are still some tickets available. I think so. There's links in the show notes. Go check them out. Come visit us. Come say hi to me in the cemetery.
Is,
Uh,
is your profile picture the blue dress?
no, that was from my
Oh, that was
tea a
cute.
couple weeks ago that I went to. That was my ode to Alice in Wonderland, sort of 1890s style.
It was cute.
But
I wasn't sure if it was if the cemetery crawl had already passed or not, but
yeah, no, the cemetery crawl. This I have a whole different outfit for the cemetery crawl. But come and see us. I will warn you. So this year it's in the Catholic cemetery, which is again near Central City. Of all the six cemeteries that are all grouped together right there, that one has the least amount of shade. So if you're coming to hear the stories and be part of the tour, bring an umbrella or a parasol or something to help shade yourself while you're walking through, because unlike the other ones that all have a bunch of trees, this Catholic cemetery has like a few clumps, and I don't think any of the graves that we're at are in those trees. So you might
mm,
want to bring some shade or a big hat or something so you're comfortable.
yeah,
The next announcement that we have, because and this
very
is thanks to
excited about
Diane
this.
because she got on the ball this weekend. Tickets are officially on sale for this year's Beyond the Grave, which again we're doing Phantom of the Opera. We're super excited about. So you can now go. I will have, by the time this episode airs, I promise it'll be on our website, but we do have it on our Facebook page. It's on the Evergreen Heritage Facebook page. Um,
And the image is just absolutely gorgeous, and it was fun because Jenny and I actually did it in tandem
I know
on
we've never done
online.
that before.
No, and it was really, really cool, and that was fun. And um, if I mean, we have like one perception of the Phantom of the Opera, and it's usually the Lon Chaney, if not the musical. And the image that we use is very conducive to the Phantom in the book. And
That was my goal.
yeah, I haven't finished yet. We were both reading, or Jenny has read, I'm reading the book, and it is very much different than the Hollywood theater or the Hollywood movie. So looking forward, I can't wait to see how you turn it into the script. And it is going to be so much fun.
Yeah, and just as a reminder, so Beyond the Grave, for those who may not have gone before, all of the proceeds, after the cost of the event, of course, but all of the proceeds go right back into Evergreen Heritage. So they help with the preservation of Evergreen and Fairview cemeteries in Colorado Springs, which are the two most historic cemeteries in the city. And so all of the proceeds that we make from this event, that's where that money goes. So that's why we do this event year to year.
And what is so cool this year, we have a special connection with Phantom of the Opera and Evergreen Cemetery. As many people know, Lon Chaney is the one who was in the original 1925 movie, and he was known as a man of a thousand faces for his way that he could transform himself. Lon Chaney was actually from Colorado Springs, where Evergreen and Fairview cemeteries are. His parents started the Colorado School for the Deaf and Blind because his parents were deaf. And so he learned pantomime and all that through his mother. And so they said that contributed a lot to his mastering of facial expressions and everything. So it's really cool this year that we have even though the book originally was written in France in what, 1896?
No, I think it was originally published in 1912. It takes place a little earlier than
Okay,
that, the story itself, but
this is the first time we've actually had a connection, which is, I think it's pretty cool. Very
yes.
special.
So definitely get your tickets for that. And we look forward to seeing you there on October 3rd and 4th this year. So it's the first weekend, as we always do, the first
Mhm.
Friday and Saturday in October. But come and see us, come and enjoy the show. It's going to be fabulous, as usual. And we'll give you more details in future episodes. But now let's get to our guest who's been waiting very patiently for us. Um, our guest today, he reached out to me actually quite a bit ago and had talked about some cemeteries that he's familiar with and that have a special place in his heart. And then I had asked if he could do like a little write up or give me a little bit more detail on it because the two cemeteries we're talking about are located in California, so not something we can easily get to for right now. And he did. He came back with the write up, and then I said, "Well, why don't you come and tell us about it, and we'll chat about it." So we would like to welcome to today's episode Randy Crane. So welcome, Randy.
Welcome.
Thank you.
We're
Thank
glad to
you.
have you. So let's
I'm
start
happy to
off.
be here.
Let's start off. So these are Broadway and Mount Olive Cemetery in Whittier, California, or they used to be there. We'll say that in a sense. What first? How did you find out about these, and then what made you so interested in these two particular cemeteries? Before we share the whole story of them.
Well, I originally I'd always known the park was there, and then when I got older and I was doing family history research, which is one of my passions. I've learned that some of my ancestors were actually buried there, and then I was confused because at the time I didn't know that it was a cemetery. It used to be a cemetery.
Yeah.
So after doing some research, I went to the park, and they have a memorial there with the plaque of all the people that are interred there, and I found their names. All their names are there. So that's how I first became acquainted with the cemetery and learned about it. But as I did some more research over the years, I found that I learned all the twists and turns that's taken with the cemetery itself and with the headstones as well, because the headstones have their own story as well.
Yes, they have quite a story. I'd say they almost
Yeah.
have more of a story than the actual burial ground portion of it. Now, for anybody who's following us along right now on YouTube, if you look behind Dianne, she has pulled up a picture of the cemetery as it was, probably sometime in the early 1900s, I'm guessing, late 18, early 1900s. And you can
Yeah, there's
see,
no date on the picture, so I don't know exactly when it was.
yeah,
Such a beautiful cemetery.
but it was at one time, it's definitely meant from the description that you wrote in your paper and from other things that I found looking it up, it was meant to be a garden cemetery, like
Mhm.
so many at the time were.
Right.
And it had paths and flowers and plantings and all kinds of stuff in it. And in this one, you can see there's headstones that are definitely marble and granite. And I really think that's a cast iron cross in the one that's right there. Um, so just a very like beautiful traditional looking cemetery, which would have been such a lovely place to be buried, it looks like initially when it
I'm
was
sure
first
it was. I'm
started.
sure it was. I'm sure that's why a lot of people, including my ancestors, chose to be there, because the reason they named it Founders Memorial Park is because most of the people that were buried there were founders of Whittier, because
Yeah.
Whittier was originally a Quaker settlement.
Mm-hmm.
They all came over from Indiana, these Quakers, including my three times great grandparents. So that's why they named it, because most of the people in that cemetery that are buried there were founding pioneers of Whittier.
And so now, if you go to visit, now originally it was the name of the cemetery. There were two of them. They were kind of side by side. Was Broadway Cemetery and Mount Olive Cemetery, and of course now it's all one park. So now it's Founders Memorial Park. So now if you're in
Yeah,
Whittier and you go to this park, technically it's
Wow.
still a cemetery.
technically it's still a cemetery. Yeah, so they're separated by a street. So
Oh
there's a
yes.
street that goes between them. So, but it's a very, very, it's it's in a residential area. it's surrounded by houses.
Right.
But there between the two cemeteries, there's a very small. It's a street. It's just a residential street, and it goes between them. So one side is Broadway and one side is Mount Olive.
Which is typical of a lot of cemeteries in a lot of towns where, you'd have like maybe the city cemetery or two different denominations, then they'd be near each other because it made sense to put them near each other, but they were different.
Divided somehow.
Right. And who is running them and caretaking for them and all of that. Now, the one thing I did find, sorry, I was going to go back in here and pull up.
So it is now like a park. Is it a park where they have baseball diamonds and stuff, or is it more like?
No, it was when they originally did it, they wanted it to be a quiet park to have respect and reverence for those that are still buried there. So it literally it only has grass and pathways and trees, and it has benches and tables. But
You could
that's
go have
it.
picnics.
Yeah,
You could have a picnic there.
sounds
Yes,
nice. I mean,
it is. It is it's very tranquil. As long
So
as there's not too much traffic on the main street that
yeah.
runs along the side
true.
of it. It's
So
I say a main street, but it's kind of like it's the most traveled street for that residential area
now is Whittier.
because
Now
it's not a main boulevard or anything.
I don't know Whittier. Is it a very big community or is it fairly small?
Well, it's in Southern California.
Mhm.
It's a suburb of LA of Los Angeles,
Okay,
so it's in LA County,
but
which
not
is where I
in
grew up.
LA.
I grew up in the city over called Downey, but a lot of my family lives and some of them still live in Whittier. So I'm very familiar with Whittier with that area. But yeah, it's a residential area, so it's not like on a main boulevard or anything like
So
that.
what, now that you're saying this, that you said a lot of the original founders were Quaker. What
Correct.
brought them all the way to Southern California?
I'm
With
trying.
that particular religion, it's I mean, there's a lot of things they didn't do. So that makes me wonder what brought them out to California.
You know what? I'm off the top of my head. I cannot remember why they
Huh.
originally came from Indiana.
I mean, I think that's cool. I just it's making me wonder what made them leave Indiana for Southern California of all places.
I would my guess would probably be a more climate, like a milder climate,
Oh, that's true.
milder winters. Because I know there's a house in Whittier called the Bailey House. They were like the big the head Quakers, I guess,
Mm,
of that, and their house is still there to this day. And they said they if at that time we because Whittier is kind of it's a foothill community,
mhm.
so it's right up against the foothills. And when you stand at the Bailey House at the time, you could see the Pacific Ocean,
Oh,
which
how
is
cool.
30, 40 miles away
Wow.
Wow.
from there.
That would have been a very different view from what you see in Indiana. The
Yes.
And
cornfields
when
of
was it
Indiana
founded?
to the Pacific Ocean.
When was it founded?
Whittier,
Yes.
1887.
Okay.
Yes. And then according to this from the Whittier Historical Society, so the person who founded the cemetery was Willett Dorland, and he and
That's
his
correct.
family, along with his brother Henry and his family, arrived in Whittier in late 1887. And then Willett is the one who donated a portion of his land adjacent to his house for the cemetery itself. So that's how they got started. And then they, along with his brother, they founded the Whittier Cemetery Association in order to maintain the cemetery for that time period, at least for the beginning of it. And then they added walkways and planted gardens to, again, make it a garden cemetery, make it what we had in the Midwest and back east and all of the places that had these large, gorgeous garden cemeteries. And then the first mention of the cemetery and announcement of burials appears in 1888 in the Whittier graphic newspaper. And then you had mentioned in the write-up that you had that there had been burials there earlier, but we didn't know
Yes,
the
I think
exact date of like the first burial.
The Broadway Cemetery. I think the Broadway Cemetery, their first burial was in prior to 1895.
Yeah.
But I guess there's no record of exactly when the first burial was, but Mount Olive's first recorded burial is in 1881.
Oh, shortly, pretty much right after
So
they
all
were.
of this really prior to the official establishment of the
Correct.
cemeteries
Right.
themselves. I mean, obviously people were there and you still have to bury
Right.
them when they die. So we got to do something with them. So the sad thing is, I feel like these cemeteries didn't get a very long life before they went downhill. Like by
Right.
the 1920s, you know, what you were saying and what other research shows, by the 1920s, 30s, and 40s, it was really already going downhill.
Because after Dorland died, his daughter took over because he died in I think 1899,
Mm-hmm.
and then she took over taking care of it until she died, which I think she died in 1940, and then after that, it just nobody there was nobody to pass the torch to, I guess.
Right. Well, and the hard thing with this one, from everything I was looking up and from what you sent, is because these were privately owned, they weren't owned by the city of Whittier. So the city had no
Right.
control over what was going on within the cemeteries themselves. And so at one point they did put up a fence, mostly to try and, it sounds like more to hide what was going on inside of them and maybe keep some people out. But
Right, because unfortunately, there was it fell into disrepair, and then also there was unfortunately vandalism
Mm.
to headstones, and it just collected, just overgrown bushes and collected debris and trash, and they didn't know what to do with it, so I guess they just put the fence up.
they were like, we'll just hide it. No worries.
The problem will just go away if we put the wall
Yeah.
up.
Right, which is sad because that's not quite how that should have worked, but unfortunately that's kind of how they're doing it. And so this photograph I think that you sent us that's behind me now looks like it was taken much later, probably in the maybe 30s 40s, somewhere where it's
Yeah,
starting to go a
probably
little
it
bit.
looks like probably the 30s or the 40s.
That's what
Yeah.
I'm guessing. And you can compare the one behind Dianne to the one that's behind me, where Dianne's, you can see the headstones, you can actually kind of read the names, everything looks really well. And then in mine, you can start to see the overgrowth of the plants. It's obviously not being cared for at this point. There's a lot of stones that are already
Down.
down.
Fallen over.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've fallen down or been knocked over.
Oh, but the trees. I mean, we don't have. I'm assuming those are palm trees.
Those are palm trees. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like
Well, those I don't know if those are the original palm trees. I mean, there's palm trees that line the cemetery, the Founders Park now. I
oh,
doubt they're the same ones.
right.
They probably replaced them. I don't know for sure,
But
but
still, we have.
those same type of palm trees are there in that park today.
Yeah, because we just have pine trees. I mean, those. Oh my God, those would be so pretty in a cemetery.
If that's something we don't think about where we're at. We don't have palm trees in Colorado. So
No, we don't have
Well,
palm
we
trees.
don't really have, because I live in North Carolina now. I don't live in California anymore, so we don't really have a lot of palm trees either.
yeah,
You have
those
the
like I've
palmetto
seen them in
though,
Florida,
right?
I've seen them in California.
You don't you have the
Right.
palmetto tree, the palmetto, or is that
The
South
South Carolina is the Palmetto State, yes.
Okay, so by like you
Carolina?
said, by
Just
the
imagine
40s,
how pretty it was.
I know when you compare it to what it was, like I said, for a while, I bet it was the place to go take a stroll on a Sunday afternoon and visit your loved ones.
So I'm
Um,
assuming it wasn't just excuse my ignorance, but it wasn't just a Quaker cemetery. It was for the entire
It it wasn't exclusively for Quakers, but most of the founding Quakers were buried there. But there other people are buried there that are non-Quakers, but it was meant for the whole community because
Yeah.
at the time that was the only cemetery
now you
until
had
Ro until
sorry.
Rose Hills opened in 1914. which Rose Hills is the largest cemetery in North America. I mean, this cemetery, like, it'll bog your mind how big this is.
It's
Because
one of those that
it's
takes
only a few
days.
miles. It's only a few miles from this site, and it's just massive.
And
And
it,
they're still developing.
wow.
Because I know somebody that I'm close with about 10 years ago. I want to say about 10 years ago, they had to bury somebody there, and they said that they have room for burials for 200 more years.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
That's a lot of land.
That isn't developed. I mean,
Because like I said,
thing.
back Whittier is part of backs up to the foothills.
True.
So they are, it's just when you go through the main gate, because there's different gates, because there's the original part of the cemetery, and then
Right.
on the other side they have more barrels, but then down is where the main gate is, and you just go up this long winding road. All it's all you see are heads are is grass for as far as the eye can see, and then at the
Oh,
top they have a giant. It's called the Sky Rose Chapel, and then when
Hmm.
you get to the top, there's even more land, even more cemetery. It's just it's crazy.
And that must have become the exclusive place to be buried too once all of this
Correct.
went kind of downhill.
Because see, I have another set of ancestors, Henry Adams. He was also my third great grandfather on the other side, and he was originally buried in Broadway Cemetery, and then his widow had him. He died in 1901, and then his widow had his remains moved to Rose Hills, and then when she died, then went right next to him. So
Yeah. Yeah.
their headstones are still around in Rose Hills,
at
fortunately.
least, at least she didn't leave him there.
I don't know. I've often wondered what her reason was for moving him initially.
That's what you said in your write up. You were like, but I'm almost wondering if it was more just because that became the more exclusive place to be buried.
Right.
Or maybe you said he died in 1914, you said?
No, he died in 1901, and then
1901,
Rose Hills opened in 1914,
1914.
and then she died in 1923.
Yeah. So maybe at that point, Rose Hill, it was still a fairly new cemetery, but I bet it was
The
the
place to
place to
go.
go. And the other one was probably already starting to run down by the time, we already know by the 20s it was starting to run down. So maybe she figured nobody's taking care of it. I don't want to leave him there. This is just a
That's
hypothesis.
definitely a possibility.
And let's move him to where I know our graves are going to be better taken care of. So we go to Rose Hill.
Well, we just had a disinterment where the mother died at our cemetery, and I don't think the National Cemetery was built yet. Once
Mm-hmm.
Dad died and he's in National Cemetery, she was disinterred and reburied in the National Cemetery
With him.
to be with him. So
So funny how we move the dead
that's a
around
lot.
as much as we move the
Yeah.
living around sometimes. It just
Right.
does happen. So after this started to go into decay in the town, so obviously the town has now turned it into a park. What kind of led up to that? What were those events like to turn it not into the cemetery that we think of as the cemetery, but to make it this park and memorial in a different sort of way?
So uh, the last burial took place, I believe, in 1959.
Mm,
Wasn't that long ago, really.
That was
no.
yeah. And then after that, it was forbidden to have any more, because it was in such disrepair. It was forbidden to have any more burials after that point. And they created a committee. Um, because they wanted to turn it into they they wanted to turn it into a more tranquil place. But they didn't know how to go about doing that. So what they did was they created a committee, and they decided that they were going to try to contact all the next of kin who they could contact, to
Which is
see if
not
they
easy to
wanted to,
do.
because they wanted to see if they wanted to have them moved, or what they wanted to have them do with the headstone. And the few people that they did get in contact with were not interested because either they were too far removed from the family, they're like their two times great grandfather, or whatever. And also the headstones, as you can see, are pretty big and
Yeah, massive.
extremely heavy. So most people were just, nah, I'm not interested. So I believe in 19, let's see, I think it was 1969.
68 or 69. I remember that.
Yeah,
Actually, I think
that
I can pull it up here.
they got rid of they removed all the headstones.
Was the neighborhood
Head,
there as it is now with the houses and stuff?
I'm sorry.
Was the neighborhood surrounding the cemetery at the time? The neighborhood,
Yes,
yeah, was it there?
a lot of those houses are over 100 years old.
Oh, okay. So I could see where, hey, let's get rid of the cemetery in our neighborhood.
Right,
It's an
right.
eyesore.
I mean, if it's an eyesore because it's in disrepair, but also most people don't want to look at a cemetery.
I was
Oh,
gonna say, man,
Yeah, there are a
I
lot
would
of
kill
people
to
that
have a
will.
cemetery in my neighborhood.
Some of us would be more than fine with
Yeah.
that, but there are
I
people.
wouldn't have a problem with it, but I mean, a lot of these people, they open up their front door and the cemetery's right there,
I
you
say
know.
those are the best kind of neighbors to have. You don't have to worry about what's going on. You're not going to have any loud drunken
Very
parties
true,
Yeah.
very true.
or anything like that.
Well, and it was the late 50s, early 60s, or late 60s. And then at that time there wasn't the interest
Right.
in historic preservation as there
For the
was,
cemeteries,
or at least for
especially.
us in Colorado. I mean, I think back east, I think they have done a much better job. Granted, they have at least a good 200 years on us, but I think that they've done a really good job in maintaining and preserving what's there. Where I think here in Colorado, we really didn't get behind things until about the late 1960s. So I
Mhm.
wonder if this might be the same. Well, that's California, so it's
Right.
probably
Well,
the
and
same.
looking at this, so apparently, this is just to give folks an idea of how many people are still interred at the memorial park now. There were at least 365 burials at Mount Olive, and there were an estimated 926 burials on the Broadway side. So, we've got almost 1,300 people buried between the two cemeteries there, that did not end up getting moved because, like you said, the families decided it was too expensive. They didn't want to take on that task, didn't want to have to figure out where to move them to. So that's a lot of burials that are still actually where they are.
Everybody's
Minus,
exactly where they left them.
yep. So 1968 was when the city council said, okay, we're going to remove the cemetery, meaning we're going to take away all the headstones and we're going to re-landscape it so that it's this park as opposed to a cemetery.
Right.
And then the park was actually established in 1969.
Right.
Um, right. And it's maintained by the city now, as opposed to where the cemetery was not maintained by the city. This park is maintained by the city of Whittier now.
Yeah, and all the pathways of the park follow the original pathways of the cemetery.
Which
So
I
that
think is
way,
lovely.
yeah, I do too, because that way, at least in this section, there's burials. And
Mm-hmm.
this section. So
That way, you're not walking over anybody's.
You're not
yeah,
disturbing somebody's
Yeah.
and
grave.
you have a pretty good idea where the burials are at, which I mean, that's nice.
Well, and if there's any map, I'm assuming there's a map or two of the cemetery as it was laid out. If those are still in existence somewhere, you could potentially go back and say, okay, I have ancestors buried in this section that would be sort of in this plot area here, even
Hopefully.
without markers or anything. You could kind of
Right.
Right.
figure out where they're still resting.
I haven't run across a map that shows where people were originally are were buried.
Yeah.
I
I
don't know
mean,
if it even exists. I don't know.
it'd be interesting to know. I mean, some cemeteries kept brilliant records. Other cemeteries we know from research, not so much.
Did
So
not.
it depends on who's in charge and who's doing what and what the concern was. So now we get to the more interesting part to me, because again, in America at least, and I'm assuming other countries have this too, but I know in America, we do have a lot of parks or other public spaces that are actually still cemeteries. There's bodies still interred in them, but they've removed the headstones. The land was repurposed for other things because we always come up against the discussion of what we need for the living versus what we need for the dead and how much space we have and all of that. And depending on where in our country you live, like, on the East Coast, I know there's a lot of cemeteries that have been covered over with buildings and such because they're so much more crowded than we are
Right.
out here in the West. It happens all the time. But what I find interesting is the story of the headstones that got removed, because they did remove all these headstones in order to build the park, and then they did put up the memorial with all the names. So where did all these ginormous fancy headstones end up? They had a
So
little bit of journey.
originally they were at the Pio Pico Mansion, which Pio Pico, if you don't know, is he was the last Mexican governor of California, I
Oh,
believe. So it's called the Pio Pico Mansion, and they were stored there. They leased the land, and they were stored there up until 2001 when they were transferred to the Whittier Museum. And I remember this is now we're entering where I remember things my personally, but I remember um, the museum backs up to an alley, and if you went down that alleyway, you saw all of the headstones stacked just on top of each other
There's
because
like that.
they didn't know what to do with them. They had so many, they didn't know what to do with them.
Oh
well,
my
They
and
had
again, when they took him out, it was kind of before we were thinking of preserving
God.
headstones the way we think of it now. Here's another photo. Yeah, Diane and I just changed our background photo so you can see pictures of these headstones
That blows me away. But I've seen this.
stacked on top of each other.
I've
yeah,
seen
they're
this
just stacked
done.
on top of each other, and they didn't know what to do with them. And I mean, thank God they didn't destroy them.
Oh,
At least they preserved them.
yeah, I have horror
Um,
stories about that. So yeah.
and so they were there for about 15 years, and then in 2016, they were sold to a private owner.
This is where it gets really good.
So they were sold to a private owner. Man's name was Dale Bybee, and I I remember I ran across this article. Maybe it might have been a year or two after it actually happened, and I was like, "Oh, what do they do with the headstones?" So he purchased them, hauled them away. They didn't. I guess they just didn't ask any questions. They say, "Oh, okay, go ahead. You
Take
paid
them.
us for them.
Yeah.
Just take them away." All right, and they only kept a handful. They do have a handful that are actually displayed
Oh,
inside the
good.
museum. But so he takes them, and then I start to see, ran across another article about what happened to these headstones. So this man Dale Bybee lives in Acton, California, and it is uh, about a five. I would say it's probably a 5 hour drive, maybe more. I would have to look it up. I've never actually been to Acton, but it's not close. So he has a lot of land out there, and well, from what the pictures that I've seen, it's mainly like desert, desolate
Mhm.
desert. And what he did was he started to display these headstones all over his property and was attempting to pass it off as a legitimate cemetery as if there were actually bodies there.
Oh,
Why? Well, because his land sits on a parcel that was slated for a high-speed rail, which he was opposed to. And there's one
I
picture
was able to switch one of the
oh,
pictures
so
out. So
this is
this
the
is in
picture.
Acton.
that's
Okay,
an
okay.
Acton, yes. So you can actually
It was brilliant.
you can actually tour is there's a sign that says tour cemetery.
Yeah.
And you can actually get apparently get out and walk and just tour the cemetery. But the local news and authorities got wind of it, and they were curious.
When a
Everybody
cemetery
that lived there
sprouts
was
out of
like, wait,
nowhere.
there was never a cemetery there before. Where did all these headstones come from?
Right.
Um, the high-speed rail has still not been built. Surprise, surprise. That's been a problem. That's a story for a different time. But
But we have a
the
similar one here. So yeah,
Yeah.
we get that.
the high-speed rail has been talked about for the last 25 years, but nothing has been built. Not one piece of it has been built yet, and probably never will be. Um, and I know that there's another article that I read about somebody that either currently works or used to work at the museum, the Whittier Museum, and they went and actually toured the cemetery. And
Hmm.
it's on Facebook. I know the pictures are on Facebook
Yep,
because
I have them right here actually. I'm looking at them.
yeah, so they toured the cemetery, so the headstones are still there. They're still there, and I actually one day I would like to go there to see if my ancestors' tombstone actually survived all these moves because
It would be
it's been
interesting.
moved around so much. Who knows what ever happened to them if they're even still exist? But
Well, he looks like he's actually from the pictures, the ones on Facebook and the ones that you sent us. I mean, he did a fairly good job of like putting these stones back together because he had to put bases back with the stones
right,
themselves to set them up. Now, granted, he doesn't have to worry about a grave collapsing underneath it or anything like that, but like it legitimately does look like a cemetery on his property.
it does. It looks like a legitimate cemetery
And
unless you're a local who knows that there never was a cemetery there before 2016.
And I do appreciate his quote from one of the articles, and I don't know which article this was, but he said, "Someone spent time carving these and crafting them. They are a piece of art." And so I do appreciate that
Exactly.
he said
Very true.
that.
I mean, you can't fault him for saving them. The people who should be ashamed of themselves are the ones who removed them to begin with. So I think it's cool that he saved them. I mean, somebody, well, I'll tell you after this. But it's like I would have headstones in my yard. My husband may not be thrilled, but I think I would.
Well, he also said, "I feel it was a good investment in case they, meaning television and movie production companies, want to use it for props."
That's true.
Yeah,
Because
because his whole
apparently a lot of films are made in that air in the Acton area. So including a lot of westerns, which
yeah,
So that
it
way they
looks
don't have
like
to
it looks
film at
like
a
an
real
old West
cemetery.
cemetery.
Yeah,
yeah. So it's already laid out for them. And then also the Green Mile was filmed, parts of the Green Mile was filmed there. And I guess parts of Titanic were even filmed in the area. So
I
that's
didn't
very
know that.
cool.
I learned that when I was looking up stuff. So Acton, I guess it's close enough to Hollywood that they can probably get their equipment and stuff out there more easily than other locations, but still far enough away that they don't have to worry about the city being in the way when they're filming. But
That's really cool.
so yes, he had two plans for his cemetery. One was to help not have that railway get built through his property at least. And the other was to say, hey, if anybody wants to film their movies here and needs a cemetery, pay
Here you
me and you
go.
can do it.
Come pay
Yeah.
me and you can use it.
And he's preserving art. I mean,
He is preserved. Well, and what I think is great about the preservation part of this is like for yourself or another ancestor, if you guys or descendant, if you guys are going looking for the stones for whatever reason, at least there's a place you can go. I mean, it's not obviously on top of their
right.
graves anymore, but there's a place where you might be able to find their stone and photograph it and have the record of the fact that your ancestors had a stone. Which there's a lot of times when people are doing their genealogy research, there may not even have ever been a
Right.
stone for somebody. So
Mhm.
at least he was willing to take on the
Save
tons
him.
and tons of weight to haul it out to his place and set it all back
Yeah,
up.
that was not an easy process. It's not like he just turned it back
I'm
with
sure
a pickup truck.
I'm sure he had to make several trips
Oh
I'm
yeah.
back
sure
and forth.
because that's a lot of weight to haul and set up, and it is to some ways a labor of love to recreate that cemetery. But I do think it's fascinating that this is what happened. I've never heard of that anywhere else happening where somebody took all the stones away and
No,
said, I'm going to recreate
Nope,
a cemetery in
me
my
either.
backyard.
no,
Nope, me either.
yeah, usually the stones are just discarded and they disappear. So,
Or you find them sold not
right.
necessarily fully legally or whatever. Or there's been cases. I know there was a case a couple of years ago back east somewhere, and I don't remember where now. I just remember reading the article where they found a bunch of discarded stones like along the river from a particular cemetery. And I think they determined in the end they were stones that were not necessarily removed from graves, but had been not fully
Disinterments.
carved or something. There was something
Yeah.
once they did more research into it, but it was one of those things where when somebody discovered this pile of headstone art, they were like, why are these just piled here along the edge of the river?
Hmm.
And we hear all kinds of other things. Or you had the one at Fairview that you found near the
Oh yeah, somebody found it near a dumpster, and she was a fairly good sized stone,
yeah.
and it's just somebody came in and decided she needed to go for a ride outside the cemetery. So
Unfortunately. So this is sort of a, as odd as it is, kind of a best case scenario for the stones, at least,
definitely,
because
Yeah,
they're
I would say so.
somewhere. And with the exception of the few that the museum hung on to, which I'm assuming were some of the pioneers of the city so that they could show off what was there once upon a time.
Hmm.
Um,
well, and
again,
the park is nice too, because I like how they kept it with the same layout and the walkways. That's really nice. And then the memorial to those who are buried there is also very nice. I mean, they could have not put anything, and just it's a park. Because
Just develop the houses over
they could have done that
exactly,
too, which then that we know what that leads to.
yeah,
it. Exactly.
According to Hollywood, we know what that leads to. Now, you did say in your write up at the end that the park, there are a lot of ghost stories that have developed in the past 40 years,
Hmm.
around the park because, like you said, the locals at least know that it's a
yeah.
cemetery. So you do get some paranormal activity, according to some folks.
Yes, there are a lot of um, what are they called? I'm sorry, not I guess ghost hunters
Yeah.
is what
Yeah,
they're
that's a good term.
that they
Paranormal
come
investigators.
with all their equipment
Right.
to come. There's you can look them up on YouTube. They're on YouTube. If you look up the cemetery, you can watch the whole videos on all the different people that have tried to pick up, paranormal activity in the cemetery. I've never experienced anything personally, like physically. I've been there in the daytime, and I've been there in the nighttime, and I've never actually experienced anything. But at night, it is very it can't. Maybe it's because I know that there's a cemetery beneath me, but it is kind of eerie. It's kind of quiet, but at night, there's a fog that you settles hovers right over just the cemetery,
That is kind of creepy.
and um, it's kind of eerie. But people heard have claimed that they've heard um, like a child crying or children playing or I think a woman as well.
Well, there's always a woman in white. I mean,
Yeah.
A woman in
The children
white.
there's
playing.
always a woman in white in these stories. Now, you
Yeah.
did say, I think it was your write up that mentioned like a diphtheria epidemic at one point,
Yeah, there was a diphtheria epidemic in uh,
which would have led to the deaths of
Children.
especially children at the time,
Mhm.
because unfortunately, diphtheria did that in a lot of communities going through the water sources. And then it hit the very old and the very young really hard.
and then also another thing that they claim to have seen is like a floating, like glowing orb,
Yeah,
Ooh.
the orbs.
which
Now,
I don't know what that is, but I've
are there lights in the park that come out like street light type lights in the park?
there are there's they're not in the park, but they're on the streets. Just the streets that surround it. There's street lights,
So there are
but
lights around it. So
there's
it's not
none. There are
completely
none
dark.
that are actually in the park.
Okay. So, well, that makes for an interesting, stories for the kids growing up nearby. Obviously,
Oh,
sleepovers
yeah.
and
Can
stuff.
you
I'm sure they have
imagine?
lots of fun.
Yeah, or when you move into the neighborhood, it's like, that's actually there's actually bodies buried there.
Yeah.
Again, perfect kind of neighbors. They're not going to be obnoxious and loud, and they're not going to throw parties, and they're not going to mess up your property. So I say the cemetery is the best kind of place to have as your neighbors. And that
I
one,
agree.
the city maintains, so it's going to look pretty all the time when they look out their windows. So
That's very true. That's very
yes.
true. It's always very well kept. The grass is always cut. All the everything's always looks really nice. And so they their goal they achieved their goal, and they've kept it tranquil and peaceful. And because I see people that have picnics there, or they sit at the table and they have, like, they just talk, have, but I mean, there's no grills or anything. Nobody's,
Right.
barbecuing or anything. But yeah, it's still a very tranquil place to be. Um, and I just one day I hope to find my ancestors' headstone, if
Yeah,
it's still
hopefully they're out there in Acton and in the new cemetery.
yeah. Because
And
I looked at all the pictures that they posted.
Oh,
But they posted some of the pictures of actual, like, yeah, just the headstone,
right.
and none of them were my ancestors. So hopefully there's more that they didn't take pictures of. We'll
Yeah.
see. One day,
I'm
one day I'll get out there and I'll see it. I'll see for myself.
just that sounds
I
like a
hope
great
so.
idea.
Really good.
Well, thank you once again so much for reaching out to us,
Yes,
Randy,
it's fun,
and
Randy.
sharing
Thank
the
you.
story. This was a fun one to share. And yeah, now that you're in another state, if you ever want to visit those cemeteries and tell us those cemetery stories, we'd be more than happy to have you back to share them.
Oh, okay. Well, all the cemeteries, all the old cemeteries out here are much older.
Yes,
Yeah.
they are.
Revolutionary and pre-revolutionary uh, burials.
Oh, you
Lots
can
of,
have so much
because
fun.
you'll be driving. It's so different than California. driving down driving down the road, and there's a cemetery that's 300 years old.
Yeah.
Those are
There's
the
a
ones that give
lot
Oh,
of
me.
yeah.
because I don't know if you've ever been to the South, but there's every other block it's a church, and then there are old graveyards right behind it.
Mhm.
Yep.
And
But
it's
those are the
so
ones that give me
green.
like goosebumps, knowing just how old they are and
Yeah.
Yeah,
buried there. That's just exciting to me. But so yeah, make sure you're enjoying those cemeteries.
I do. There's one literally less than 5 minutes from my house.
Oh
Love
my
it.
goodness. That
So
would be nice.
it would. Well, Randy, thank you once again. Thank you for
Thank
sharing the
you.
stories. Thanks for doing some of the
Thank you
research.
for having me. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you for joining us today. To learn more about today's episode, visit our website, theordinaryextraordinarycemetery.com, where you'll find additional links in our show notes. If you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe to our channel. And if you enjoyed this or any of our episodes, consider leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. Your support helps others find our show and discover all of our ordinary, extraordinary stories.
You can also follow us on social media for cemetery facts, photos, quotes, and more. We are on Facebook and Instagram at Ordinary Extraordinary Cemetery. If you'd like to help support us financially, you can donate a cup of coffee by clicking on the coffee cup icon on our website or YouTube, or purchase some of our fabulous Ordinary Extraordinary Cemetery merchandise through our store link.
Until we meet again.